everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game on the PC-98. It's been a little bit since I've taken a look at one, and that happens to be Briganty, The Roots of Darkness. So the game came out in 1995 for the PC-98, which is the version I'm taking a look at, but they also did release a Windows version a couple years later, and it was developed and published by Giga. Yeah, that's right, the same company that put out the PC-98 versions of Steam Hearts, and then there was Variable Geo, a fighting game, which I've taken a look at both of those games in a compilation of videos before, such as the hentai fighting games, and then there was the PC-98 shoot-em-ups, and unfortunately, I thought both of those games were not particularly good. Well, those versions anyways, since I have played other versions of those games, and I thought they were pretty good and solid, but anyways, so yes. So can Giga actually prove themselves by, like, putting out a decent game, or are they just gonna make themselves look like the PC-98 version of LJN or whatever? Well, we're about to find out what they can do with Briganty. So, this one happens to be a side-scrolling beat-em-up with some slight RPG elements, so hey, that's already an interesting start for me. But first, let's get talking about the game's story, and the big thing I do have to give out a warning to is that this game does have some adult content in it, and I will talk more about that a little later, but I do have to let you all know that it is one of those kind of games. And secondly, this game starts out with so much dialogue that when you first boot it up without knowing anything about it, you would just think it's just a straight up visual novel. Like, I literally had to press like the spacebar like a bajillion times just to get to the first stage. And even though this game is only in Japan, surprisingly, I was able to find two websites that did have a decent description of the game's story, so that's actually really handy. And after reading about it, I can definitely say it does make sense with the cutscenes that I was watching. So the main character that you play as is named Gaddy. Yeah, Gaddy? I have no fucking idea. Well, apparently he is both a martial artist and a black magician, so he knows how to do magic, while also knows how to, like, kick a bunch of people's asses. And he also happens to have a fairy companion that likes to pester him. So what, is she supposed to be like Navi? Well, apparently her name is Lena, and yeah, she always makes fun of him all the time by calling him like a horny horn dog, which is exactly right because, well, he pretty much is a horny horn dog. So one day they were walking around the woods and ended up finding some girl who needs some help, and it turns out that the girl that was asking for help ends up actually knocking him out and steals all his money and everything. And the fairy companion Lena ends up laughing at him because she thought it was super obvious that he fell for such a stupid trap. So after having a bad day, he ends up returning to the town, goes to the bar, and the owner of the bar needs help. And this is where the first stage begins, where you get to do a bar fight, and then once that's over with, then you get to rest at the bar, regain all your health back. But then there's a female warrior that walks into the bar, and her name is Selfina, and she happens to ask for help with wanting to get someone to help her sister, who went to find a sword, and the sword possessed her sister, who is now, like, killing a bunch of people. So of course, our horny horn dog main character Gaddy ends up wanting to do that. And that's pretty much what the story's all about. So, you know, basically our main character is just trying to, like, help out a bunch of chicks in order to get laid. Yeah, it's not really an exciting story, but you know what? It's a beat-em-up. Like, I don't really care about all that. But of course, because this game has like a shit ton of dialogue text, you do kind of have to span through it. But now, onto the more important things, the gameplay. So before we talk about the stages, I'll talk about everything in the HUD. So even though this game is only in Japan and no fan translation as of yet, I will say, the game is actually pretty easy to navigate through. So in the bar you have three options: talk to the barkeeper, go to your room and you get to sleep and regain all your health, and then there's leave. And then once you're in town, you have go to the bar, go to the church, and then go to a stage select. So what going to the church does is that allows you to save your game. But in case you're wondering what some of the other options in the church are, is that you can talk to the church girl, you can also load your game, and you can also just, like, quit the game from that menu. And then stage select as well. Obviously, you get to select which stage you want to do. And yes, you can actually, like, replay some of the older levels if you wanted to. So that's how you navigate all the menus in this game. Pretty easy, huh? So now, when it comes to the actual in-game fighting, so yes, it's a side-scroller where you get to go from point A to point B, and then you fight a boss at the end, but of course, during the middle of the stages, you just get to beat up a whole bunch of enemies. And yes, you also do get EXP and level up your character, and every time you level up, you gain all your health back. And the treasure chests also do give you a little bit of health back and a little bit more EXP as well. And one interesting feature that I didn't know about until way later on in the game is that you can actually switch to another character, and that happens to be the Lady Warrior Selfina. And you do that by pressing the escape key and then go like right or left. So yeah, just like the game Edge, which is also a PC-98 beat 'em up. And as you can see on the menu, you can also see a little bit of a move list that your characters can do, cause yes, you can also do a little bit of a magic attacks as well. And from what I've used of these magic attacks, I don't see like any like health lowering or no like MP usage, so I think you can use them unlimitedly. So yeah, you have your basic like punch and kicks, and then you got like your low attacks. You can use like a jump attack, and of course you can also like grab on the people and throw them. So yeah, just like the game Edge on PC-98, it's very similar to that, but you know, with more RPG mechanics where you get to level up your character. So that's the basics of what you need to know about the gameplay. Well, actually, I'd say that's probably just about everything, but yeah, so now, let's get right into the game's controls. And the controls in this game, I think are surprisingly pretty decent. Now, they are not perfect by any means, but compared to their other work of Variable Geo, this is a masterpiece. So I already talked about how to switch characters, which is pretty easy once you know that. But the button layout itself is pretty easy to know. So you got one key jumps, the other one attacks, and then you got the move around with the numeric keypad. Not crazy about that, but you know, I got used to it. And you block by holding up, or should I say the 8 key on the numeric keypad. Now, how do the controls feel? So jumping and basic attacks feel pretty good. I don't have any like real complaints about those. The walking, I do think is a little bit on the sensitive side, but it's not awful or anything. It's very playable. Trying to do special attacks in this game, I think is a little bit stiff and does take a little bit of a fidgeting around, but I have managed to pull off quite a few of them in a row before. I do think they are way easier to do in this game compared to Variable Geo, so it's actually a pretty huge improvement. And you can run in the game by double tapping left or right on the numeric keypad. And I also do think that the running in this game, trying to run, is a little bit unresponsive and finicky. Now thankfully, you don't need to use it all that much, but you do have to use it in order to get up to like certain ledges that are a little bit hard to reach. And one strange feature that I didn't even know was in the game until like way later on was that you can actually do wall jumps by running into a wall and then you can jump off of it, sort of like Ninja Gaiden, but of course in this game it's way harder to pull off. But like I said, you really don't need to use it at all, but I just figured it out randomly. So that's all I have to say about the controls. I think they are pretty decent. Like I said, decent, not amazing, but definitely very playable and way better than everything that this company has done before from what I've experienced. Alright, now let's get moving on to the other things, like the graphics. And the graphics in this game, I think are really nice, but I guess that's no surprise because I tend to love a lot of graphics for PC-98 games. I think the best part probably has to be the cutscenes, and I love like the way the border looks, like with like the green little like ruin type look. I really love that. But yeah, the backgrounds in general though are all very well detailed. I love like looking at this like empty room and like the forest and like this like one with like the mountain in the background. I really love the way how it's drawn here. And the character art during these cutscenes is also really great too. And while the in-game graphics are not on that level, I still think they are really nice looking for that. I really like the backgrounds and all the different set pieces. I really like the enemy designs. I think a lot of those actually are pretty cool looking. And the main character sprite is pretty good, but I don't think it looks as good as like some of the enemy designs though, but I still think it is kind of funny looking. In a way, I kind of wish they would have drawn, like, the main characters in, like, the same way how they did the main characters within the game Edge, because in that game, you know, they actually look, like, really cool, and they actually have, like, their full bodies and such. Where in this game, I feel like they look a little bit, like, too chibi with their, like, big heads. And I know some people may really love this style, and I don't mind it for this game, but typically though, I would prefer to have like, you know, like regular normal size proportions, you know? But other than that, everything else about this game is still really good looking, and I do think it is a very nice looking game. And now, as for the game's music, the music, I think, is pretty solid. I think it's a pretty good OST. Like, it does have some nice catchy tunes. It does have some pretty cool sounding ones, too, that I do like. Nothing crazy memorable, but they do have some that I do, like, enjoy, and they do fit the game well. It doesn't have a huge variety of songs, which is fine, but I think all the ones that are in the game are good, and there's really no bad song within the game. At least I don't think there's any. I wouldn't say it's like a top favorite OST when it comes to PC-98 music, but I do think it is a good one. But I don't think it's as good as like some of the music within Variable Geo though. I think that game's music is really great. It's just unfortunate that it was a part of a really shit version of a game. But it seems like no matter what they were doing, they still managed to put out some pretty good music, so yeah, overall, I like it. Now, if you wanted to go out and buy yourself a copy of this game, well, I couldn't find it on eBay, no surprise surprise, so yeah, not gonna say much about that. But now, let's get into my overall thoughts on Briganty, The Roots of Darkness. So, as you can tell from what I've said about the game's controls, this is by far the best game that Giga has ever put out on the PC-98. I actually found the game to be quite enjoyable for what it is. Like, you know, it's a pretty fun beat 'em up, I love the way it looks, and you know what, I actually thought it was quite fun. Now sure, like, the RPG mechanics in here are not like crazy in depth or anything, it's not like Star Ocean or whatever, but you know what, I'm fine with that. I think it's actually just a good, mindless, fun, action, platforming beat 'em up thing. In fact, I kinda wish we had more games kinda like this, because I don't really see a lot of them that come out in this day and age. And one thing about this game that I do like better than the other beat 'em up called Edge, that I've been comparing a little bit there, is that this game is like not nearly as hard, because the game Edge, the first two bosses were like ridiculously hard, where in this game, I found the game for the most part was very manageable and pretty fun to play through. The only part of the game that was like really hard was really just the final boss. But the one thing that had given edge to the game, well, Edge, is that not only do I like the way that the main characters look within the game Edge more than I do in this game, but I would also say that Edge's controls I think were a lot better overall, where in this game, like, they're not bad, but they are a little bit rough in certain aspects. So there's a couple things about the two games that I like better than each other, but I do think that Briganty is more easily accessible for that. It is a way easier game. It just, you know, you just gotta like speed through all those like hentai scenes. In fact, this is the one thing about this game that might be a little hard to recommend. So yeah, this game does have a lot of hentai cutscenes in it, and yeah, I pretty much just skip through them as fast as I can, because like I just don't give a shit about them. In fact, I just don't even give a shit about the story in general, I just want to kill shit. But there's no way you can avoid turning off the hentai cutscenes, because I do understand that like most people would not want to play a game with like weird like sex scenes in it. I totally get it. Because I know there's other games on PC-98 where you do have an option to like avoid them or to like turn them off. Like for an example, there's Valkyrie the Power Beauties, just don't play the story mode. Besides, you wouldn't be able to understand shit of the story mode anyways. And then in the game Night Slave, you actually do have an option to turn off the hentai scenes. So yeah, those are games that, you know, they do have hentai content in them, but you can't avoid them, where in Briganty, you kinda can't. Whereas for me, like, I've seen enough weird shit in my time, so a lot of the stuff in this game was very tame and just, like, didn't faze me whatsoever. But I have to mention that, yes, like, if I do want to recommend this game to you, there's no way you can turn off the hentai shit. So, yeah, that's what I will say about Briganty, is that fun beat 'em up, but may have some stupid story shit that might not matter to you, and it also does have some slight issues here and there, but I thought it was pretty enjoyable for a PC-98 side-scrolling beat 'em up. But it would be cool to see like another thing kind of like this, but you know, with more like in-depth like RPG mechanics and more like other shit you can do. I think that'd be really awesome. But anyways, with that said, thanks for watching, commenting, and have yourselves a great day.
I only think of holding your dick.
Be serious, you dumb girl.